I was like talking to my best friend a few weeks ago and I said something. So I speak English and French. Like I don't speak any South Asian languages.
Yeah.
And I said something like, I went like, oh, sometimes I don't feel Indian enough. And like, I don't cook Indian food, like all these things.
Yeah.
And she's like, what are you talking about? Like you work at the CHS.
Yeah.
Like you're like the way I am with my family is just like, so there are certain things. And so it's interesting that she saw me that way. Mm-hmm. It's like really identifying being South Asian and I didn't.
Sherri Shergill is a mental health therapist and executive director of PCHS Calgary and the founder of MJK Center in Rajasthan, India. Sherri is known for her affirming and anti-oppressive approach to therapy and for creating spaces where people, and especially women of color, can heal and reclaim their narratives. Thank you so much, Sherri, for being here. It's going to be a great conversation. I can't wait for you to listen. Is there anything? How are you feeling? Do you want to address anything?
I am 8.5 months pregnant.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
8.5.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Fine, I think. I don't know. Like
different than the first one, right?
Yeah, you don't rest. So I feel like the first pregnancy you can like rest when you don't have kids.
Oh, that's true.
And then now,
like you're still a mom.
Yeah, so you can't go home and sleep. And then there's like a staff of 18 that's really needy that I manage, and
we're wonderful. You love us. And you're like actually a Calgarian, like born and raised.
Yes, born and raised, yeah.
How has that been for you? Like I came to Calgary only 10 years ago.
Yeah, I was born here, but then spent the first like 5 or 6 years of my life in California in the States, and then moved back, and then did my master's back in the States. But obviously continue to like come back to Calgary, and it's just, yeah, it's home. It's where all my family lives.
Yeah.
And it's obviously a really different city than when I grew up here.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, do you feel like it's changed over the years?
It kind of felt like when we were younger, everybody knew everybody, especially in like the South Asian community, and now it's just like exploded. And I think like we probably got the best of Calgary. Like we grew up as like the economy was growing and everything, and then I think things have really shifted in the past few years. Mm-hmm. And it just has like bigger city problems or issues and challenges that maybe we didn't have.
Traffic now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I remember thinking if we had to go anywhere like 30 minutes or further, it was like a really long drive and we probably wouldn't have gone. And now that's probably like the status quo.
Yeah, and I say that as like a selling point. I'm like, everything's 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
But like now there's traffic.
Yeah.
In the past 10 years. So I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Since you were like young, how many changes, especially post-COVID, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I do like Calgary. Like, I'm not going to crap on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've seen it change a lot. How have you seen the South Asian community evolve over all these years?
I grew up in an area of Calgary that, like, didn't have many South Asians. I think elementary, junior high, high school, it was like I was probably one of 2 South Asians. And then in high school, there was 6 of us, but it was 4 of them were my cousins. And so we didn't really get to grow up with like a lot of South Asians aside from like going to the Gurdwara like once a month maybe. And then I got to start university and just met like a bunch of different people, and it really felt comfortable, I think, being like, oh, here's people that understand my culture a little bit more and understand why my family makes decisions the way they do. And so I liked that. And now it's probably been, I'm going to age myself, but like 20 years since I started university. And the population has just grown, like South Asian population has just grown tremendously.
Yeah.
That it's like hard to say like we're all one way or another. And I think there's like 2nd and 3rd generation South Asians and then really new immigrants. And so maybe we're not as interconnected anymore as we used
there's
to
like
be.
different groups and different, I guess even within that, like people we associate with, people we just run into, and like different friendships are formed that way as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for you, you kind of mentioned that it used to be very close-knit.
Yeah.
And your background is in mental health, which we'll talk about. But like, do you feel like that makes it easier or harder to get access to services because every brown person knows each other? everyone knows each other's business? Or like, do you feel like that's changed now because it's a big city?
I almost wonder if it's easier in some ways because there's so many more South Asians. Like you become a little bit more anonymous, right, in the city. So I almost wonder if it's like easier to access services. I also think times have changed. Like 20 years ago, I don't think many people knew what therapy was, or it wasn't common. And now I do think like it's really common between the ages of like 20 and 40 to be going to therapy.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe access has gotten better. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, you're right. Like it is a big city now, and there's if people are talking about mental health services or immigrant services or anything with just like we're advertising it and we're really like encouraging it and talking about it. Like even when I came as an immigrant, like my parents didn't know any of those services.
Yeah.
And even now when I tell them to new immigrants who have come, I'm like, wow, I wish we knew this. Like it would have been so helpful to like know this thing existed.
Yeah. I do. So yeah, I think there's a lot of services that exist. I think maybe like the knowledge maybe isn't there. We like don't do the greatest job of like sharing what's available to the South Asian population or new immigrants.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, so we work at PCHS Calgary, and it's such a great organization that offers free mental health support and addiction support. But I think when we say it's free, people are like, oh, that's for somebody else.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, it's really quality. Like, I think people sometimes don't think they can access certain things. Yeah. And so that's also a learning.
Yeah, so we're clearing up any misconceptions right now. It's available for anyone.
Yes.
We don't do any background checks. You don't need to have like your socioeconomic status. Nothing is discussed. It's free for every single South Asian or someone who identifies as South Asian.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, you've always worked in these kind of organizations. What made you first be like drawn to working with the racialized or new immigrant population? Like that's been most of your career.
Yeah. So I started in like mainstream social service sector, like in disability, and then moved to like family violence. And I think in the family violence sector and working in there was like where I saw a really big difference in like how people were accessing the system and then who was getting better service and who wasn't. And I think what I realized is like that sector was made for like mainstream Caucasian Canadians to thrive and like to gain access, but not necessarily for like the minority ethnic populations or Indigenous populations.
Sorry.
Like I think it's hard to navigate like most social service sector kind of areas. And so I think the other thing that really stood out to me is like I was probably the only person of color in most of my like mental health therapy jobs that I'd had in the first half of my career. And then moving into like leadership roles and management again was like the only person of color.
Yeah.
And then advocating to like increase programming for ethnic minorities just like wasn't well received, I think. And so I got to move into like serving immigrant populations and refugees. And I think that really shifted like my desire to be like, I still want to work frontline. I still want to work in this like therapeutic kind of frontline work, but I want to do it with like racialized populations because I think when I worked in the immigrant sector, we delivered like therapy with like interpreters and with cultural understanding, and you could feel the difference that it was making, and especially when you kind of looked at how we were doing it before, when we were like working mostly mainstream. And so then I thought, okay, this is something that actually works for people, and so wanted to continue that.
I love that journey, and I like see like you know, you saw a gap and you were like working really hard to address it. What do you think about the shift where it's like women of color have to be the ones who have to do all this work? Like it's disproportional to potentially like men of color. Or like it's a lot, even if you see like all our mental health therapists, a lot of them are women. And then potentially like researchers or people who have PhDs are more men. So it's like women are carrying the weight of this.
Yeah.
Have you thought? You're like, yes.
I'm like, how political should I get is actually what I'm thinking about the answer. So I think women in general are like always the frontline workers, right? Like men in any of like these jobs is like pretty rare, and like I bet there's like I don't know what the ratio is, but I bet it's like 8 women to 2 men, whatever, right? Like it's very disproportionate.
Yeah.
And I just took that from like our own staff. So I think, I mean, we see it in teaching, we see it in like all these things that are so important for our community, and yet it's always women that are like taking on these roles, and they're usually like the most underpaid. Like there's so much to it. And I think then being like a woman of color, it just like adds further to like that burden maybe that we feel. I don't know why other women of color go into this profession, and I don't know, like, but I'll speak for myself, is like I could never imagine going to work and like making money for somebody else. You know, like if I'm going to have to spend 8 hours of my day like away from my family or working, I'd rather do it to like make positive change and good than, you know, just to like make a paycheck. And so I don't know why the burden falls on like other women, but that's probably like my motivating factor of being here. I didn't answer your question though.
No, but you answered the next question,
Oh,
which is good, because I mean, we need that, right? Like I think it's the same for me. It's like I want to work in a place where I make a difference. And that's such a like narcissistic statement in that sense.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Like it's so selfish to even say that, but you're right, as a therapist, you can like see the change it's making for someone who has never experienced therapy, has never had access to services, and you're like changing their life in a very immediate way.
Yes, yeah.
And that's like, it's like, why would I not be doing that if I have the privilege to do it?
Yeah.
But yes, you don't get paid much.
No.
As I'm saying this as someone who pays me.
Sorry.
It's so funny. You're like, no. But on that note, like, then do you feel like pessimistic, or do you feel burnt out? Like burnout is different, but like just by the lack of social change sometimes. Like I think I was telling you, even for PCHS, when we were doing a presentation a few years back on family violence, someone came up to me and she's like, I gave this exact same presentation in like the 80s and the trends are the same for our people. And I was like, oh. And she's like, that makes me sad. And I was like, well, you know, like, anyway, I gave a response, but what's your approach to this?
So I think the trends are the same for every kind of population when it comes to family violence and a lot of mental health issues. Like, I don't think they've shifted dramatically, whether you're South Asian or not. But do I feel pessimistic? Yeah, I mean, I work with funders. I work with like different government agencies, and there's definitely a social shift that's occurring where I think the last decade I really felt hopeful, and I felt like we were progressing in many ways. And now it feels like there's a bit of like a rollback on a lot of the progress we've made. And so it's hard not to feel like down and stressed about it.
Yeah.
But I remember like an old supervisor said to me once is like, well, if you're not going to do it, then like who's going to do it, right?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I think I can let it burn me out, and I can like, it'd be so easy to walk away and be like, I've tried, I did what I could, and like gave it my time. And yet like, who's going to do it if we're not doing it, right? And the reality is like, we keep talking about PCHS, but that's because like, that's my most recent kind of experience. But the wait list continues to grow. We see individuals and then they bring in their family members. Like there might not be this big, like significant community shift that's occurring, but we do see individual change.
Right.
And I think for me, that's like enough to keep going.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you're right. Like people ask me a similar thing, and I get burnt out by the job, but I would get burnt out by any job.
Yeah. Like I just don't like working. Like it's not.
Yeah. I'd rather like be and like on vacation.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, even to that individual who's been a nonprofit forever, I was like, well, you made a difference to those families that you work with, and I'm making a difference with these families. Yeah. And yes, decades have passed, but like humans don't change like across the world and across, you know, so we still have similar problems, but just different families are handling it in different ways.
Like my hope would be that maybe the issues still exist and the challenges still exist, but that like people access support quicker. Yeah. People know where to go a little bit easier. Like I think if we can even shift those things, I think we're doing a good job. Like to get to the root of the issue, and like that is so tough to do. Yeah. But if we can just make sure that people aren't struggling for so long as they maybe were in the 80s or something like that, then Yeah. Also, the 80s were 40 years ago. I just realized.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
did not realize that either. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like, I literally was like, how old am I? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Okay, so tell us a little bit about PCHS Calgary and what made
Sure.
you want to get involved.
Am I allowed to say you work there too?
Yes,
Do people know that? Okay.
they do now.
I'm Aruni's boss.
Yes.
No. So I've been at PCHS Calgary for 2.5 years, and it's a organization based in Calgary that supports South Asians with their mental health, addictions, family enhancement. So any kind of like family systems challenges that they might be having. And we do it all for free. So we do it, yes, in first language. So we have staff that works in Hindi, Punjabi, and Urdu, and English, of course. But I think beyond that, we just understand maybe the cultural and systemic challenges that occur for South Asian individuals that might be getting in the way of their success. And so, like when I think of like our domestic violence programming or addictions programming, that's where I really think like this is different programming than they would receive in mainstream services, because we talk about family pressures, we talk about, you know, multi-generational homes and I think masculinity in the South Asian culture that might be affecting some of, you know, people's behavior. And so whenever we talk about PCHS and people really promote like that we do it in first language, I'm like, oh, there's so much more to what we do than just the language piece.
Right.
And so we've been doing it in Calgary for about 14 years, and we're modeled off an Ontario program that's been around for nearly 40 years. And we have a staff of just under 20 with psychologists, registered psychologists like Aruni, social workers, and then we do like a lot of community work. So a big portion of our PCHS's programming is really education and community awareness, which I think just like fits into our conversation before, is like I just hope people know what mental health is, know what support can look like for them, and they know how to access it. Yeah.
And then, I mean, PCHS is such an amazing organization. What made you want to come on board? Because you were working in more mainstream, you said. I
was working with refugees and immigrants, and it was 4 days a week. Like, it was such a nice job. And then I got approached to like join PCHS, and it was like a lot of responsibility to take on. And yet there was like this feeling, I think I've said it before and it sounds so cheesy, but it was this feeling of like, okay, I went and got educated and I gained all this experience, and it was this, I think I owe it to my community to like come back and like bring that into my own community.
That's so nice.
Yeah. It kind of sounds cheesy, but yeah.
No, I mean, I understand where you're coming from though, but I don't know. I'm trying to formulate this thought also because I've had this conversation with other women who work in this field where it's like, you know, our work, even for me, like my podcast and like the work I do is so South Asian oriented, but there's so much more to my identity where I identify as a Canadian, or my friend group is different and the food I eat is different. And it's like when someone asks you, what do you do? It just sounds like your life is centered around the South Asian identity. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you feel that way, or how do you combat that?
I was like talking to my best friend a few weeks ago and I said something. So I speak English and French. Like, I don't speak any South Asian languages.
Yeah.
And I said something like, I went like, oh, sometimes I don't feel Indian enough. And like, I don't cook Indian food, like all these things.
Yeah.
And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, you work at PCHS. So like, you're like, the way I am with my family is just like, so there are certain things. And so it's interesting that she saw me that way. It's like really identifying being South Asian and I didn't. And that doesn't answer your question at all. But like the idea that it's so much a part of my identity, I don't know. I guess I don't feel that as much.
Yeah, I'm always kind of, you know, because I came from a corporate world, I feel like you didn't want to be too loud with your identity. And then I feel like when you find your voice, you're like, I can't go back to not having it.
I think that's like a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, this is all I do. This is the people I talk to. This is the clients I see.
Yeah.
So it's hard to like what's my identity, basically?
Yeah. I think that's like I think that's fair. So I don't know. I also just feel like it's my right to talk about it and also my responsibility. Like I think of like our mom's generation. You probably think I am your mom's generation,
Oh my
but
God, no, I don't.
but I think of our mom's generation, and I think like they didn't get to have a voice and they didn't get to advocate for themselves nearly as much as now we get to, and so like I can't just let that go. Like, you know,
Right.
like I have to be able to like speak, you know, and support my community in a way they weren't allowed to.
Or they didn't even know how to.
They didn't know how.
Yeah.
They didn't even know it was an option.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think also like being a part of Western culture has given me the tools to do that. Right? So I think maybe that's why I feel like there's a balance to both.
Yeah, like there is like you assimilated as from both sides. Like that's what I view myself. I see myself as like Indo-Canadian or whatever that title is, where I'm like, I see myself as someone who's grown up here and has friends here and all these things, but then all my work professionally is like helping my own community. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely like see myself as Canadian first. Like I was, born here, raised here. Like I feel very Canadian, and despite maybe what some government is trying to take away from us, is like also part of being Canadian is being able to like really kind of like hold on to your heritage, right? And
that's like core being a Canadian. Like that's
I think so. Yeah.
So we thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then can you tell me a little bit about like the work that you've done in Rajasthan and like the nonprofit that you've created there or founded?
Yeah. So me and my family founded it. I'm like, it sounds so crazy if I'm like, I founded it. So I would say my dad, like... my cousin, and me really like took on the brunt of the founding of that. It's been nearly 20 years that we did that. So my dad and his siblings are all from Rajasthan, rural Rajasthan, which actually has the highest infant mortality rate in South Asia, or in Asia in general, actually, I think. In that like section, in that like, little section where my dad was born, like his village is not like a normal name. It's like goes by numbers and alphabets. Like it's 35 BB. Like it's a really small area, and fairly remote in like in a desert region. And so my dad is the youngest of 10, and his mom passed away 3 months after he was born from like birthing complications.
Wow.
And then somehow all 9 out of 10 of those siblings eventually came to North America and got here in like some crazy ways. They grew up with no parents. They all really raised each other. And then I think my dad feels like he found success here, both I think financially and like socially. And he thought, okay, I want to give back and go back to that area that like where my mom passed away. And so we started Mata J Corps, which we call MJK, and we focused primarily for like the first decade to 15 years on physical maternal health. So in that rural part of Rajasthan, we started a clinic where people would come every Sunday and get maternal health care. So we would do like provide the like medicine for free. We would do like ultrasounds, blood pressure, all these things completely for free. And then we would also like go and pick them up from the surrounding villages and like bring them in.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think we've had like, and then we would pay for their births. So we would pay for their travel to like the nearest and kind of like best hospital in the region, and then pay for them to deliver there. So I think we've delivered over like 1,400 babies.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But then in 2018, we actually added a mental health component to the program there. So now we do physical and mental health support.
For maternal, like for the maternal mental health or overall?
Maternal mental health.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it really does focus on like female health. But similar to like what we deal with at PCHS is like if we don't educate and work with the entire family, we're not going to really see change. And so
we need like an in also.
Yeah. And realistically, like a lot of the women come to the clinic on Sunday and they're accompanied by like either husbands or mother-in-laws. And so we use that to like do education sessions because they're waiting for a few hours to get like everything done. And so maybe it's like the the pregnant women or mothers that are getting the physical and mental health support, but then we try to do a lot of education at the same time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's like incredible work that you're doing. I think when you were joining our team and I did my like creeping of you, I was like, who is this person? And then when I saw that, I was like, that's such an incredible initiative to be over here also and be like, okay, well, this is an issue that doesn't affect me anymore, but like I know it's affecting that region and so many more, and like the fact that you are able to do something about it and just go
honestly, it has nothing to do with like me anymore. Like now I'm a board member and we like work on the finances and the HR and like programming maybe from here and making sure we align with like our grants that we maybe get from like North America and stuff like that. But it's like we have the most incredible people on the ground. So we have one of my cousins that is like in Rajasthan that runs the clinic on the ground. He's like a 65-year-old now farmer.
Wow.
I don't think he has education past grade like 7 or 8. And he actually struggled with like addiction issues and domestic violence and really turned his life around. And so he has something that I always call like social capital, like people in the community really respected him. And he's kind of take the program and like run with it. And I think he's kind of like our model for look, people can change. And like, he's like become this feminist almost, like, whereas he never had that before. And I think now he understands like the importance of like females in the family system and so it's just the people on the ground there are like actually the ones that are making MJK amazing.
Man. Yeah. I mean, that's like the success story in a sense. I mean, it's your cousin, so you see it firsthand, but like those are the stories that make you keep going, I feel.
Yeah.
When you see someone who's like set in their ways and then they suddenly change and like they learn or they empathize with something that seemed out of like, their comfort level completely.
Yeah. Honestly, like I'm bringing it back to PCHS, but I think what's interesting is so many of the issues and challenges we see in like rural Rajasthan with like the clients we see or the community members we see and the success is similar to so many of the clients we actually see at PCHS.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, but like also that like shift, right? Like that like a lot of our community in PCHS at like the same as the community members in Rajasthan, like they've never been given a chance to like learn about other ways of life or, like so much of their belief system is like inherited from these like patriarchal kind of like ways of being. Yeah. And then it's so nice to be able to see that once people are like provided maybe more education or more support, their belief system does kind of change for the better, or what I think is the better.
Yeah. More egalitarian, maybe more equal. Yeah, it is. Yeah. You mean you're right in like the work that we do as therapists, we approach it from a non-judgmental lens. So when people even ask me, or I'm sure you've had that question, like working with family violence or working with perpetrators of violence, whatever type it might be, it is challenging. But when we approached it, it's like this is all they've known. Yeah. And we can educate them and tell and correct them. And especially, the way that I think we take it also at work is like, these are the laws of this land. You have to follow certain rules. And then you understand, then you talk about why you have to follow them. Yeah. So it is very challenging, but have you worked with a lot of perpetrators in the past or in your career? And like, how's that been?
Yeah, I think I started working like on the women and children side initially. I think, and then working with children, like inherently you start working with both parents. And so you kind of get to know some perpetrators. And I think also working in family violence and working with children, there's a stat, again, this also hasn't changed, is I think if you're a male child that has grown up around family violence, you have an 80% likelihood of becoming like a perpetrator yourself. Okay. And that same stat is like for a female, but they would become a victim.
Oh, wow.
And so when you're working with children, I think you're looking at these little boys and you're thinking, oh, there's like a good chance that if we don't do like, proper therapy and we get you proper support, that you're going to continue this cycle.
That's a terrifying thought.
It's crazy. Like it's crazy. Yeah. And so I think then when you're working with like adult male perpetrators, there's a part of me that's like, you were probably a victim at some point yourself, right? And you're the way you chose to survive is by becoming the perpetrator, right? Or the way you chose to protect yourself was by becoming the perpetrator. And so I think that's like shifted my understanding of working with men. And I know there's female perpetrators, but predominantly like men.
It is predominantly, yes.
Yeah, in this field. Did I answer your question?
I don't remember my question.
Okay.
I honestly don't, but I mean, and again, I want to put that like disclaimer almost. It's like if you are a survivor or a victim, you know, we're not saying this so you empathize with the person who's hurting you in any means, but it's like as professionals, how we work with those clients. You know, like it's not, because I think sometimes people come up to me and they've asked like, oh, my partner has done this, but I think it's because of their childhood trauma. So we're not excusing the behavior. No. But I think as a professional, it's pretty, you have to touch on that empathy. Yeah. And I think picturing that and being like understanding the system behind it. Yeah. Not just the individual.
Yeah. Thank you. You should just use that instead of what I said. But like that, I think that's like really true. And also I have such a belief that like if we aren't supporting perpetrators in like rehabilitation, we're really never going to see change. Yeah. Right? Like, and we see it at PCHS all the time. Like a lot of our clients come in and they're mandated to like receive our programming. And we spend the first few sessions, you know, like trying to get them to see like, maybe they should take some ownership, right? Yeah. Because they feel like they somehow are like victims of the system, or they were just doing what they should be doing. Like there's just so much of that. And so I think, I don't know where I was going with that comment.
It all makes sense in the big.
Yes, but like it's just like it's like they haven't ever interacted with somebody that maybe is pushing back on some of those belief systems, right? And it takes a while. Yeah. But I do remember when I started in family violence, one of my family members was like, "Oh, so you're trying to like get the families back together?" And I was like, "What?" Like, no. Like I'm not trying to split them apart, but it's definitely not my goal to like
tie a bow on it and be like, now you're happy. Yeah. I know I had, I think one of our coworkers in the past, she used this and it stuck with me. She said it like, earlier on when she was working with the perpetrator, she was like pushing back in a gentle way. And afterwards, when we were debriefing, she was like, I think I'm the first woman who's ever disagreed with him. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, you're probably right. Yeah. Because it was a new immigrant. It was a very patriarchal family and like all those things that we know about our community. But when she said it, I was like, I think you're right. Like, you know, we have a little bit of authority here and we're exercising it. And that's a shock for them. Yeah. Which is crazy, right? Like, and I think that goes back to that idea and like approach of like what's different in mainstream that maybe racialized minorities aren't receiving. And it's that like, at least there's been exposure to like, I don't know, to just different things. Like, I think if you're born and bred in Canada, you've probably been exposed to like females maybe expressing their opinion or being your boss or being even in the workforce and like all these things. And if you're coming from, you know, like, I don't know, like different countries and stuff like that, you haven't probably been exposed to any of that. Or not as much. Yeah. Where it's still like a nuanced, you know, outlier sort of an experience. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, we talk about this like every day, but it's nice to have this conversation kind of in the sun because there's so much we can talk about. And we don't have to talk too much about like family violence or anything unless you want to. Hold on, I'm going to cut all this out because I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, this was a good conversation, even though we're talking about like very tough subjects. Yeah. And I know you and I are used to it because we talk about it every day.
And I'm like smiling about it. It's because it's like such a part of our like everyday life. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it is. But I mean, it's nice that we have these conversations and we talk about the challenges that we experience also as like frontline workers. Because I'm sure there's so many people listening that also, you know, can appreciate that.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm actually considered a frontline worker anymore because I don't see clients.
I guess.
I just boss people around.
Yeah, you just boss us around who see the clients, but you've experienced enough, so I'll give you a pass. I have one last question for you that we ask everyone and it doesn't have to be related to anything we talked about, but what advice would you give your younger self? It's going to be something like totally random.
I know I said like I could never imagine making money for like somebody else, but like Okay, you can cut this part out, but that's probably what I actually would tell myself. I was like, go make money somewhere.
Yeah, go make money and then come back and do this work. Okay,
No.
we'll save it.
What advice would I give my younger self? I don't know. That's probably gonna be like, I like myself. I don't know.
That's a very healthy
I like the
attitude to have.
trajectory I took. Yeah, I don't know.
That's like that. That's a very healthy answer, in a sense.
You know what I have learned recently? Like, I think with like all these political things occurring, or like, is like I can scream as much as I want, but some things and some people aren't going to change, and probably picking my battles a little bit more. I think like I used to push back on everything I thought was wrong. And that can be like very exhausting emotionally and mentally, and I probably would pick my battles a little bit more. But honestly, some people deserved it, so.
You're like, I don't regret it.
But like for my own well-being, I probably,
That's fair.
I think that's like something I would probably tell my younger self is like, you're not going to change everyone, so like you don't need to fight back so hard.
Yeah, I think I would actually give myself the same advice.
Yeah.
I feel like just because someone is, what's the word, like rage baiting you?
Yeah. And I took it. Like I took it all the time, especially like politically and socially. I'd be like,
Yeah. Don't get rage baited.
Yeah.
That's your advice to yourself.
But I just didn't know what rage baiting was.
No, it wasn't a word then. We're just educating.
Yeah.
Okay. That was our conversation. Thank you so much, Sherri, for coming.
Ruby.
And you can find out more information about PCHS Calgary at pchscalgary.com. And then if anyone is interested in donating or contributing to any of the nonprofits, do you have information for them?
Yes, you can go to pchscalgary.com if you'd like to donate there, or you can go to mothajcorps.org if you'd like to donate to the clinic in Rochester.
Amazing.